We wanted to say thank you all for over 1,000 downloads. We're so excited. We're so happy that you all are joining us. Be sure to go wherever you listen to your podcast, hit that follow or subscribe button. That way you can get our weekly episodes that come out. And be sure to give us a review. We would love that. Thank you all so much.
What if it's not about a building? What if it's not about stained glass or steeples? What if it's about just Jesus?
Cory, I was 37 when I found Jesus.
Wow.
Savannah, how old was you?
39. I'm almost 40.
39, almost 40. So we missed out on all the child stories, all the books of the Bible that people learn as a child, and trying to go back and find those, that's hard to do.
It is.
It is.
I feel like the stories that I do know about are those childhood stories that I've told my girls. And that's kind of the basis of the knowledge that I came into this with.
Right. And if you try to Google that or go to a podcast to find that, it's all people reading like they're reading to a child. It's almost, it's hard to listen to those and still keep your self-respect and feel like you're supposed to be listening to those, you know?
Absolutely. Well, like, I had this, it was like bedtime stories,
Right.
Bible stories that I was reading to the girls when
A
they were
lullaby.
little. And that's literally the basis of my knowledge that I came here with.
Yeah, no, that's exactly the same. I've listened to all kinds of silly YouTube videos, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, I want to get the story in the way that other people have gotten it. And then I want to go back and read it. It's like
Yeah.
they always say you want to read a book before you watch the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm kind of the other way.
Oh, come on. You get so much more detail.
Yeah.
So how do you like it, Stephen? What do you like to do first?
Truth be told, I never read the book. I just watch the movie.
And then maybe go read the last chapter of the
Right.
book.
Oh, my
I go
goodness.
Google what the differences are.
Well, you know what? That's kind of one of those like blissful things, because sometimes the book you're so invested in, it's so good, and they just don't portray that as well in the movie. So it ruins the movie.
Yeah. What was the thing we did as a child? It wasn't iReady back then. It was something readers where you had to read and take a test.
Oh,
I saw Matilda on there and I was like, that's it. That's the win. and they always throw that one question in there that they know is different.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
But Matilda was a good movie.
Yeah, but the book was different.
Oh, yes. They always are. They have to change something.
But you wouldn't know unless you looked it up.
I know because I got the question wrong.
Do you remember what the question was?
No, I can't remember.
Well, and somewhere else, thinking about movies and stuff, some of the basis of my knowledge came from VeggieTales.
Yeah.
VeggieTales was awesome.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's cool.
It's all kind of like Bible story based, but it always blew my mind, and I loved watching them because they were great, because they did all these things, but they had no arms, no hands, no arms.
How are we gonna raise our hands?
Which right?
Man, so I was just thinking about that, and it's funny because these are the things I'm about to mention, the stories I'm about to talk about. They're very strong stories in the Bible. Even if you didn't know a lot about the Bible, when you learn these stories, I mean, yes, it could be for a child and it could be very simple, but it could really help you in your life, to encourage you to feel your faith building each time when you read these stories and you hear these stories. And so I was thinking of like maybe 4 or 5 stories that's definitely stories that you would remember and you would hear about as a child. And there's a lot of people that can probably tell you these stories, even if they haven't been, in church or around church, just as a child at some point. Even if you wasn't even around church as a child, somebody's read these stories to you, whether it's been a daycare, your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your grandma. And I was just trying to think of the ones that people remember the most. And I don't really know, unless it's just the simplicity in the story, like Noah's Ark. You know, kids, you talk about the animals. You got David and Goliath. You also have the children of Israel passing through the Red Sea, and Moses holds up the staff, and the whole sea is parted by God. That's amazing.
I think we take some of the next couple episodes and dive into each one of these stories in depth and in detail,
Yeah.
and have almost like a series of those stories coming up.
So I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Not only bring back memories of people that have heard these things, it strikes something in their childhood and brings it back and takes them back to that place. But even still, we all need to hear these things over again. Peter said in the Bible, he said, I thought it necessary to stir you up, to stir your spirit up by way of remembrance. And so all these things, even if you've heard it 1,000 times, even if you think you know every detail, I promise you God can give you something great, a good point, a new enlightening in these stories. And yes, we definitely need to go over them. Also, you have the 3 Hebrew boys. Have you guys?
Now, I remember enough about it to tell you the story, but not in any detail, because of one of your sermons was about the boys.
I won't get into it too deep right now, but basically it was a story where these three Hebrews were basically an intern to the Chaldean kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar, which was a king that these boys were very intellectual and very, very smart, and he wanted them under his rule and doing things in his kingdom. So therefore, he brought them over to teach them his cultures, and he wanted them to obey and abide. And there was one certain point that he had this huge statue built, and it was like 90 foot tall, of like gold and silver and all these very expensive materials. And at the time, he put out a decree that when music played throughout the kingdom, that every person under him and in his kingdom would bow down to that statue. And these 3 Hebrew boys were serving a different God. And they said, no, we will not bow to your idol. We will not bow to this statue. And he said, anybody that doesn't do this, he put out a decree that if they do not, that they would be cast into a fiery furnace.
That's fierce.
And I want to just touch this and say this. First of all, nothing's too hard for God. And when you put your faith all in with God, the Bible says if God is for you, no one can be against you, or who can be against you? Nothing. If God be for you, who can be against you? And so God was with these boys, and I won't get into all the details because I'd like for us to go really into the story, but they were cast into this fiery furnace. And imagine this. Let's just say they came out and God saved them and brought them out without even the smell of smoke. And what's the chances of that? I mean, you think about the potent smell of smoke, like if a fire, or even if somebody is a smoker, you think about how strong that smell is, and how when you get into that proximity in any way, you know,
it gets on you.
Yeah, it gets on you. It gets on your clothes. I mean, I've been at bonfires and stuff where smoke just blows on you, and you come home and your clothes are just awful like that. God brought them out because they said, we will not bow. But our God is able to deliver us.
The amount of faith they had going into that they said here in Daniel 3:17, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty.
Man,
Dude, that is huge.
read that first line one more time.
We are thrown into the blazing furnace.
Okay, so check this out. Read just above that next verse above it.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us.
Man, I'm about to run.
Dude, that is huge. They went into that furnace knowing that they had nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Give us everything you got.
It's amazing.
Listen to this. The king was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that his face became distorted with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated 7 times hotter than usual. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. And because of the king and his anger, he had demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in.
No.
Whoa. Wow. So he takes, man, think about that. So he takes his mightiest men, 3 of his strongest soldiers, to cast those 3 Hebrew boys into the furnace.
That's right.
But the furnace is so raging and with such power of the flames that the fire destroys the men that threw them in there.
Yes. And it gets better. Because of his anger, the king had commanded it to be so hot, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in.
So wonder what that would look like. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, could you imagine?
It'd probably be blue.
Yeah.
It's so hot it's blue.
It said the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost like when you take a log of firewood and you go to put it into one of your flaming hot fires. It almost takes everything you got to get close enough to toss it in without getting hot, you know?
yeah. So I want everybody to think about this. I know this is a part of the story that not only did they throw them in the fire,
Yeah.
but they completely tied them up
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
from their head to their feet. They are completely bound.
Securely tied, fell into the roaring flames.
Yeah, and so they had all their clothes on. They had their hat on, their complete everything, and they threw them in completely bound.
All flammable items.
Yeah, yes,
All
yes.
flammable.
Yeah, all flammable. Everything about it. So they cast them in there, already tied up, bound up. Not only that, but into a fiery furnace 7 times hotter than normal.
Oh, Stephen, read some more. I've been reading ahead. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Oh,
this
man.
is crazy.
I can't read this story ever without tearing up, and sometimes I just get overwhelmingly just taken over by just how God intervenes and how he's so amazing.
And just to save myself my own embarrassment, instead of pronouncing the king's name, I'm just going to say the king.
Yeah, sure.
But suddenly the king jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?"
So I'm getting a picture right now. And what I'm thinking about is this story is so crazy because why is he asking this question? Why is he's ragingly mad? Because something is happening for him to say and ask this question to his counselors. Did we not cast 3 men? Did we not throw 3 men in here?
Okay, tell us why.
They answered and said to the king, "True, O king, look." He answered, "I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God."
Wow. I'm about
the Son of God.
I'm about to run. You know, it shows you that a lot of people don't even realize or think about Jesus being back there.
Mm-hmm.
But he was. He definitely was. And
What's amazing is that, like, when you hear the story, you think about God just saving people, but, like, he is there with them.
yes, he's there with him, which means maybe there's something to that as to why it says when they were casting them in, or when they were, I don't know if they fully cast them in and the fire grabbed them. I don't know if they were going to cast them in and the fire, jumped out and burned them up. But either way, wouldn't it be awesome to think about it like they looked into the furnace and they saw Jesus in there already?
Wow. Yeah.
Before he even was born?
Well, that's what I was about to ask you. This is all, yeah, like this is all Old Testament, right?
Yes. So you got to
Is this like a prophecy?
no, you got to think about it really on a more spiritual level. Like, this Nebuchadnezzar is really like a spirit of the devil. This is evil and good. And how could he know that the form of the fourth was like the Son of God? Something he already knew. Like, the devils know Jesus, right? The devils know him, and they know the children of God. He was literally like a demon possessed devil, this king. He knew Jesus. And Jesus said in John, the first chapter, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God.
So, question, and we know there are no stupid questions here, but
Yeah.
so here's my question. Okay, so when all of this is happening, has Jesus been born to Mary yet?
So this was, according to most scholars, 165 years before Jesus was born.
Okay.
Okay, so this is more of a spiritual Jesus. This is not
Not the Jesus.
no,
Okay,
but
okay.
you got to think about it like this. God is a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the Holy Spirit of God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jesus was in that same boat. Like, before he ever, God only sent him here to put a body on him. Think about him.
Okay.
You know,
It's all come. I
okay,
get it now.
so
Okay.
think about the angel, like, that you read about in the Old Testament, Gabriel and the mighty angels that came and visited men. They were men. They looked like men, but they were the angels of God.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus could come around anytime he wanted to, and this was one of the most powerful, only times that something is mentioned about the Old Testament without being prophetical,
Mm-hmm.
that literally said Jesus was there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's before his birth, and it's before the New Testament, and when he really got into a body.
Right. So he's always
Like, he didn't go out of the fire and they didn't go have lunch with Jesus afterwards.
right. He was spiritually there.
He was just in the fire.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most powerful thing about the story. It parallels with all of our lives, in our most
Mm-hmm.
deepest, darkest trials, in our hardest times of our lives, in the fire spiritually. He's there.
That's amazing.
And it's really when he's there the most, and when you see him the most, and which is why we have the faith to walk into the fire,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to bowing down or giving out or giving up.
Right.
So, yes, this is very theological, and I'm sure there's lots of people that say this may not be Jesus or something to that effect, but I know that that's Jesus, and I know that that demonic spirit in that king recognized, why do I see four men, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God?
Mm-hmm.
Only in the fire.
Hmm.
It's really overwhelmingly powerful. If you just forget about everything, the Son of God's in the fire with them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key to the story.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So when you read that verse right there, did not we cast three men bound, hand and foot into the fire? Didn't we do that, counsel? So what the whole story is like, this king has a visual of them. And I'm sure that this is the reason he was so mad and angry, because he didn't hear nobody screaming.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't smell the smell of burnt flesh. You know how awful that smells.
Ugh. Yeah.
No tortured screams. Like, he wanted these people to suffer horribly because they did not bow down to his statue, to his commandments, to him as the king of that kingdom. So to me, that fire to them was no more than a shadow. I mean, it's hard to imagine that, but I'm just, what kills me is that they were bound up, hands and feet. And when the king saw them, he didn't only see three in the form of the fourth as like the Son of God, but he said, "Why do I see four men loose and walking around with no hurt on their bodies? There's no harm on them. They're loose. They're not even bound up anymore. They're completely free, without no harm, without no pain, without no torment, right in the middle of this flame. And they are walking around with the form of the fourth, and he looks just like the Son of God."
Absolutely. And then the king came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So he knew.
Oh,
He knew that.
He knew that he was about to change his whole perception of, once he was trying to be God, I'm the ruler, I'm the one you bow down to, and his whole story has changed in the snap of a finger. And if you read the rest of that, it gets really awesome.
So the three Hebrew boys stepped out. Then the high officers, officials, governors, and advisors crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed.
I'm running.
And their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke.
That's
What?
amazing. You can't even get close to a fire and not smell like smoke.
I mean, those guards died throwing them in the fire.
Yes. Just completely destroyed them right there in the instant.
Then the king changed his tune.
So he changed his tune.
Yeah, 100%. He switched up. Then he went to him and he said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. And they have frustrated the king's words and yielded their bodies that they should not serve nor worship any god except their own God."
Wow.
Man.
You talk about humbled.
Oh man. Humble. That's a great word. God really knows how to humble any people, any person, from their highest degrees of platforms and authority and power. God can do one thing and change somebody, just like he did, Saul to Paul, just like he did to our lives when he showed us himself. God, when he really moves on a person and in a person's life, there's more to that right there.
He said, "Therefore I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, thou shalt be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon.
Wow.
They went from being murdered.
Yeah.
Check this. They went from having a decree that if you don't bow down to this image that I've made, if you don't bow down to me, if you don't bow down in my kingdom, that decree is what got them through into the fire. But because they wasn't even afraid of the fire, their God was so great, and they knew that he would deliver, or he was able to deliver. They was willing to die even if he didn't deliver. But because of that, his decree was changed, and he made another decree that if you don't have good things to say about this God, if you even try to speak against this God, I'm making another decree that you will be destroyed.
Can you imagine how powerful this whole scene must have been for him to just be like, you know what? Whoops, I made a mistake.
let me turn back and change my thought process a little bit.
Yeah.
And changing tunes.
I'm sorry, big man upstairs.
Yeah, no, and changing the tune just a little bit here. You know, we figured that this was a long time ago, to say the least, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
At what point does it become history? And what point does history and the Bible separate? Because I know Mila, my daughter, she's actually learning about Israelites now in school as part of history.
That's awesome.
So at what point does this become history, not the Bible, or vice versa? I know it's all history, and that's what makes it true, right? But at what point do they become intercommingled?
Well, I mean, you can find all kinds of physical, like transcripts of these biblical stories and these things that have happened, and even the life of Jesus. All these things are on record. You can go back. I mean, our whole time process comes down to BC and AC, before Christ and after Christ. I mean,
Right. There's no more guarantee than that.
no.
But yeah, that was a little sidetracked and not actually on point with what we're going with. But like, at what point, why would this story not be in a history book? This is phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like anything to do with God is so unknown and uncharted, and just people, like I said, people are really afraid of what they don't understand, and afraid to dive into it. And you got atheists that want to dive into it just to know about it and how to defend their side of there not being a God.
Well, and at what point in our lifetime, or will there ever be, that we have a story like this, that we have that miracle moment, that there is no questions of is there God or isn't it? We can tell anybody, any atheist, any agnostic person, we can tell them, no, this is what happened.
Well, it's like all the old timers, and they say there's no atheists in the foxholes. In other words, like when you're at war, and when it comes down to, you literally could be taking your last breath. We'll see how easy it is to that point, and at that point, if you're going to stay with that belief that there is no God. It's like Columbine, the shooting, a few years back, when the man pointed the gun to the kid's head and said, "Do you believe in God? Are you going to bow down to that and say no? Or are you going to stand up when everybody else is not, and you're going to say, yes, he is alive and well, and he's real in my heart." Even if it costs you your life, because we're getting to a place that a lot of people are bowing down to a lot of different ungodly images in this life. And it's going to get to the place to where they're going to close in so much on Christians and believers. I mean, they're already doing it. One of the top moving Christian bodies right now is in China. And they are moving like a snowball effect in growth of Christianity and turning their faith over to Jesus. But they can't even mention the name in some places without their life being jeopardized or in jeopardy of losing their life. So what they do is they go underground in different places underground and meet at least 2 at a time. And that's it. This whole big movement of multitudes of people believing in Jesus, but they can meet underground at like 2 at a time.
Hmm.
And those people over there, they laugh at our Christianity over here. I mean, we're on stages and we're having big smoke scenes and the big lights, and we're having the awesome singers, and, we're having a high old time over here. And they are hiding under the ground 2 at a time to meet to talk about Jesus and their faith
Mm-hmm.
at any moment. And other parts of the world in lands, distant lands and across seas and stuff where you can't say Jesus.
History repeats itself. I'm sure there was a time way back when all of this you couldn't
Yes.
believe and
Yeah, and it just, that really is coming to the end of the world. It's really coming to that place to where they're going to try to stamp out everything that says Jesus. I'm sure there'll be a time that they will take "In God We Trust" off the money. It just is inevitable. Like there's going to be a time probably that you can't even have a Bible. There's going to be a time that you're not going to see God on every corner. You're not going to see churches on every corner. And because overall, when this country started, it started on faith. The majority of the core of this country was faith built on God and His Son for this world and the love of this world. And you could have all kinds of origins, all kinds of different races, all kinds of different religions in America. But as long as the core belief of this country was on God and His Son, we were good.
mm-hmm.
But the world is turning away from that.
And I hate
America is.
to repeat what I said, but if we had something, not to this extreme, but something like the Hebrew boys where there was no other explanation but God, 100%, wouldn't it be easy? And
Mm-hmm.
everybody would believe. I mean, you can't not believe when you see something like that with your own eyes, or see it recorded, or see it on TV. Like, that's real.
I think that's why it's so powerful in those stories. Those stories that we're talking about, people have kept them in their hearts from even childhood. You think about Daniel, who was cast into a lion's den.
Mm-hmm.
Those were hungry lions. They were supposed to devour him, and that was the whole point. They didn't. He used them as pillows and slept the whole night and was never touched, not a hair of his head.
But I wonder if that's not what God's doing. He's not letting us tear it all down, tear it apart before He does something to bring us all back together.
And I'm sure He will, and I'm sure it's going to get to the place to where people are going to put their focus so much back on God. The true believers, the true children are going to rise up to the occasion, and there's no telling there's probably going to be a huge revival
Mm-hmm.
sweep over this country, sweep over the world, and it's happening now. There's pockets of people who are the remnants, the people who are rising up to go into the fiery furnace, to go into the lion's den, to go into the Red Sea, to go in to, face the giant. There's a thing that's going to call us to do that, as many times throughout the Bible, as we as children of God, we're typified as the army of God.
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones that are holding up the bloodstained banner and the standard of Jesus, saying, we believe in Him no matter what you tell us, no matter what you try to take away, no matter what you do to us, how you try to harm us, how you try to throw us in prison, you try to physically whip us, torment us, whatever. You can't take what is in us out. You can't take Jesus out of our hearts. So you have to know that whatever it looks like and however broken you've ever been in your life, or how the walls try to close in, or the powers that be try to take you down, the giants, the lions, the fire, right in the midst of the fire, that's when we praise Him. And so just know that no matter what it looks like or how hard it feels or how much pain it's bringing, that place right there, in the hottest place, in the most consuming place, Jesus is with you, and He says, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you, but I will go with you always, even unto the end of the world. Be blessed.